Merry Christmas and welcome to Adventures in VFK. This is Fairy Fanatic, and I wanted to share with you a few of the Christmas things that VFK does. One of them in particular is the Advent calendar, and this is the only place that I know of that actually has an Advent calendar at Christmas time in their game. So you go over to the menu, you select Advent calendar from the menu, and here's your Advent calendar. Is this amazing or what? I love this. I mean, they have this amazing rich scene here, and it's got candles that are flickering and snow falling outside and a fire in the fireplace, and it is just warm and wonderful. And if you can see on the tree, it's got little candles flickering on the tree. So this is it's like an old time Christmas scene. It's really just beautiful. So you'll see the numbers on the screen. Those are the doors for the Advent calendar. And what you have to do is you take the door for the day. Here's door number 1, and you open it. So this is day 1. And this is a pin that you get in the game. So let's close it back up. It's like got like little balls of little ornaments in it. So what I thought I would do something with this Advent calendar, and that is I want to read you a story. Now, I'm not going to read it to you all at once, but I'm going to read it to you a little bit every day. And I thought, it'd be kind of nice. We can sit here by the fire and I'll read you the story. I want to read you A Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens. Now, that's a story that a lot of people have seen the movies and the kind of the theater version of the book. But a lot of people just haven't even read the book. They know that it exists. They've seen the movies, but they don't actually know what the book is. So I thought I would go ahead and read it a little bit every day, in like 23 pieces, and we'll just see if you guys would like to hear, like it, if you enjoy it. And if you do enjoy it, let me know. Leave me a comment, and I will go ahead and maybe even come up with some other things. I love to read. I love to read to my family and my nieces and nephews and such. And so I really thought this would be a fun thing for both me and hopefully for you. So I guess let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so here we go. This is A Christmas Carol in prose, being a ghost story of Christmas by Charles Dickens. This is a preface that he wrote for it. I have endeavored in this ghostly little book to raise the ghost of an idea which shall not put my readers out of humor with themselves, with each other, with the season, or with me. May it haunt their houses pleasantly, and no one wish to lay it. Their faithful friend and servant, C.D. And he wrote that December 1843. Okay, so Marley's Ghost. This is the first chapter. Marley was dead to begin with. There is no doubt whatever about that. The register of his burial was signed by the clergyman, the clerk, the undertaker, and the chief mourner. Scrooge signed it, and Scrooge's name was good upon change for anything he chose to put his hand to. Old Marley was as dead as a doornail. Mind, I don't mean to say that I know of my own knowledge that there is particularly dead about a doornail. I might have been inclined myself to regard a coffin nail as the deadliest piece of ironmongery in the trade, but the wisdom of our ancestors is in the simile, and my unhallowed hands shall not disturb it, or the country's done for. You will therefore permit me to repeat emphatically that Marley was as dead as a doornail. Scrooge knew he was dead? Of course he did. How could it be otherwise? Scrooge and he were partners for I don't know how many years. Scrooge was his sole executor, his sole administrator, his sole assign, his sole residuary legatee, and his sole friend and sole mourner. And even Scrooge was not so dreadfully cut up by the sad event, but that he was an excellent man of business on the very day of the funeral, and solemnized it with an undoubted bargain. The mention of Marley's funeral brings me back to the point I started from. There is no doubt that Marley was dead. This must be distinctly understood, or nothing wonderful can come of the story I am going to relate. If we were not perfectly convinced that Hamlet's father died before the play began, there would be nothing more remarkable in his taking a stroll at night in an easterly wind upon his own ramparts than there would be in any other middle-aged gentleman rashly turning out after dark in a breezy spot, say St. Paul's churchyard, for instance, literally to astonish his son's weak mind. Scrooge never painted out old Marley's name. There it stood, years afterwards, above the warehouse door, Scrooge and Marley. The firm was known as Scrooge and Marley. Sometimes people new to the business called Scrooge Scrooge, and sometimes Marley, but he answered to both names. It was all the same to him. Oh, but he was a tight-fisted hand at the grindstone, Scrooge, a squeezing, wrenching, grasping, scraping, clutching, covetous old sinner, hard and sharp as flint, from which no steel had ever struck out generous fire, secret and self-contained and solitary as an oyster. The cold within him froze his old features, nipped his pointed nose, shriveled his cheek, stiffened his gait, made his eyes red, his thin lips blue, and spoke out shrewdly in his grating voice. A frosty rime was on his head and on his eyebrows, and his wiry chin. He carried his own low temperature always about with him. He iced his office in the dog days and didn't thaw it 1 degree at Christmas. External heat and cold had little influence on Scrooge. No warmth could warm, no wintry weather chill him, no wind that blew was bitterer than he, no falling snow was more intent upon its purpose, no pelting rain less open to entreaty. Foul weather didn't know where to have him. The heaviest rain and snow and hail and sleet could boast of the advantage over him in only one respect. They often came down handsomely, and Scrooge never did. Nobody ever stopped him in the street to say with gladsome looks, "My dear Scrooge, how are you? When will you come to see me?" No beggars implored him to bestow a trifle. No children asked him what it was o'clock. No man or woman ever once in all his life inquired the way to such and such a place of Scrooge. Even the blind men's dogs appeared to know him, and when they saw him coming on, they would tug their owners into doorways and up courts, and then would wag their tails as though they said, "No eye at all is better than an evil eye, dark master." But what did Scrooge care? It was the very thing he liked, to edge his way along the crowded paths of life, warning all human sympathy to keep its distance, was what the knowing ones called nuts to Scrooge. Once upon a time, of all the good days in the year, on Christmas Eve, old Scrooge sat busy in his counting-house. It was cold, bleak, biting weather, foggy withal, and he could hear the people in the court outside go wheezing up and down, beating their hands upon their breasts, and stamping their feet upon the pavement stones to warm them. The city clocks had only just gone 3, but it was quite dark already. It had not been light all day, and candles were flaring in the windows of the neighboring offices like ruddy smears upon the palpable brown air. The fog came pouring in at every chink and keyhole, and was so dense without that although the court was of the narrowest, the houses opposite were mere phantoms to see the dingy cloud come drooping down, obscuring everything. One might have thought that nature lived hard by, and was brewing on a large scale. The door of Scrooge's counting-house was open that he might keep his eye upon his clerk. The door of Scrooge's counting-house was open that he might keep his eye upon his clerk, who in a dismal little cell beyond, a sort of tank, was copying letters. Scrooge had a very small fire, but the clerk's fire was so very much smaller that it looked like one coal. But he couldn't replenish it, for Scrooge kept the coal box in his own room, and so surely as the clerk came in with a shovel, the master predicted that it would be necessary for them to part. Wherefore the clerk put on his white comforter and tried to warm himself at the candle, in which effort, not being a man of a strong imagination, he failed. Well, that's the end of the story today. Thank you for joining me. I hope you enjoyed it, and that you'll come back tomorrow and hear the next part in A Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens. Merry Christmas! Bye!